Welcome, everybody. We want to thank you for participating in this virtual conference. We are so pleased to have Natasha Shifrin, Head of Sales Development at Creator IQ. Before we start, I just wanted to remind everybody that this session is being recorded. So if you do not want to have your image recorded, just be sure to turn your cameras off. Feel free to use the chat box if you have any questions. And without further ado, I'll send it off to Natasha.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yes, my name's Natasha Shifrin. I head up sales development and strategy at Creator IQ. Creator IQ is a SaaS technology. We work with brands who are looking to build and measure their influencer marketing strategy. We like to think of ourselves as the Salesforce of influencer marketing. And today, I'm going to talk about authentic leadership and how the shared experiences of the last few months can make us better leaders. So just a little bit about myself. I like plants. This is one of mine. This is a rattlesnake plant. I love live music, so it's been a bit of a downer the last few months. That's a picture of a band that I saw live last year called Rainbow Kitten Surprise. They're amazing. Go and see them for the name alone. I like lions. That's not one of my pictures. And I like the French accent, but I couldn't find a picture to go with that. So I'm British, obviously. I now live in New York City, and I moved to New York via Tel Aviv. And why am I speaking today? I've been working in SaaS, in inside sales, for about a decade, really dedicated to sales development and leadership. And I love it. I love sales development. I love the building process of it, the instant gratification that you can get from the job, the freedom to experiment, the fact that you straddle between marketing and sales, and most importantly, I love to see the growth of my people. I've seen SDRs grow to become enterprise account executives, to become head of sales at other startups, to move into customer success and work their way up through the customer success career path. I've had some reps leave to start their own very successful companies. And, this is what I take. This is what I take from the role. And I'm today going to talk about authentic leadership, why I think it's important, and how the common shared experience of COVID and the recent tensions after the murder of George Floyd can help guide us to become better leaders. So what is authentic leadership? What is this concept? When people talk about authentic leadership, what they're really getting at is the concept of a leader as someone who promotes openness and can build trust with their people and have their people follow them out of desire, out of a willingness to follow, and not just because they're being told to or because they're afraid to lose their job. And the idea of authentic leadership is it's pretty new in a theoretical sense. That means that there's a lot of definitions and there's a lot of ongoing research, and with anything, there's some detractors. It can be a simplistic outlook. It's based on philosophical constructs, and it can sometimes sound a little airy-fairy based on a utopic dreamscape rather than the realities of corporate life. However, the concept itself isn't new. Right? The ancient Greek philosophers talk about authenticity as being in control of your own life, and there's the received wisdom of know thyself. I also believe that humans know when people are being authentic, when they're genuine, right? Humans have the capacity to really understand when we're exposed to authentic or disingenuous people, and we're drawn to the former, we're drawn to authenticity. We can recognize it when we see it, even though it might be hard to articulate sometimes. So in the last decade, I would say there's been a real interest in this idea of authentic leadership, and there's a gentleman named Bill George Bill is a professor at the Harvard Business School, and he was the CEO of Medtronic, which is a large medical device company. And in 2003, he wrote this book called Authentic Leadership, Rediscovering the Secrets to Creating Lasting Value. And it was really born out of the lack of confidence in business leaders and this idea that when companies focus on authentic leadership, they create greater shareholder value. So authentic leadership can impact the business bottom line. And then in 2007, he published this book, Discover Your True North. He interviewed 101 global leaders in an attempt to outline what the common traits of authentic leaders are. So the idea was, if you can bring all of these traits together, and maybe create a list, it's easy to coach, it's easy to teach, it's easy to implement. And unfortunately, a direct quote from the book is some bad news. These people did not identify any universal characteristics, traits, skills, or styles that led to their success. Rather, their leadership emerged from their life stories. So, okay, Bill wasn't able to suddenly tell us how we're going to become an authentic leader. And I guess that makes sense, because if we are just copying a checklist of action items and behaviors, by definition, we're no longer authentic. We're not being authentic. But what Bill does is he outlines some ways that people can discover their authentic self. So he talks about people using their personal stories to gain strength through some transformative experiences. There's a level of self-awareness which is found in authentic leaders, and that means listening to and accepting feedback, which is hard to do. Authentic leaders know what makes them happy, and they can find that balance between the extrinsic and the intrinsic motivations, and they build a strong support team around them. So, okay, I think we're getting a little bit closer to this sense of what an authentic leader really is. But why do we care? Why am I talking about it today? So, as I stated, Bill George notes that authentic leadership can impact the business's bottom line. Okay, that's the big picture, but how? How does that bring value to the business? So the style of leadership, authentic leadership, it really empowers more people to lead. The key to a successful organization is having empowered leaders at all levels. Authentic leaders can inspire those around them and empower others to step up and lead. So you're going to create a really strong core and foundation by exhibiting authentic leadership. And there's also studies that show that people perform better and they're more engaged when they focus on being their authentic selves, rather than trying to be all things to all people. So really, when people feel free to be who and what they are, whether privately or publicly, they have more energy to create. They have the energy to innovate. Authentic workers, they bring their whole selves to the job, so they're more engaged with the company's goals, with the company's mission. By encouraging people to be who they truly are, and by welcoming those differences, leaders can create more supportive and productive work environments. Employees become more engaged and more willing to take risks. They're channeling that energy into innovation, which inevitably is going to benefit the company. So, to get to this somewhat idyllic state, leaders have got to pave the way by taking steps to becoming authentic leaders themselves and becoming authentic themselves. And I'm sure that everyone in this room has seen the Brené Brown TED Talk at this point, where she says at its core, leadership is about relationships. Right? And being in a relationship with anyone does require a certain degree of vulnerability. So I think we're getting this picture, right, of what an authentic leader is and why it's important. It's good for the business. It's good for the company. It's good for the people. And we know, I hope we know now that there's a level of self-awareness to be vulnerable and to be transparent and to be present. These are all the elements that can make an authentic leader. And then, I have my definition of what I believe authentic leadership looks like. And, I'm not a scholar and I'm not a researcher and I don't have mounds of data that I've analyzed. I have my own experience to draw from, mainly the mistakes that I've made and the wins that I've celebrated. And when I think of authentic leadership, I'm really thinking about how it allows me to create space for my team so they can feel comfortable being their authentic selves. My role as an authentic leader is to allow my team to feel comfortable to be their authentic self. I think it's really important. And I've seen time and time again, when sales development reps are truly comfortable and when they're not worrying and there's no fear or concern about embarrassing themselves, that's when we get the best results. And the way that we communicate within that space is important. And when I say communication, I don't just mean the language that we use or the tone, but communicating from our own authentic self, that vulnerability, that presence, the openness, encouraging your team to feel safe to communicate in the same way. And for me, exhibiting these qualities allow my team to grow into their authentic self, which, as we've seen, is going to benefit the company, right? Because it's going to bring out these raw, new levels of creativity. It's going to encourage their engagement. It's going to empower them. And they will pick up on these qualities organically and they will start to implement them too. And when your team becomes better communicators, it's going to create mutual trust. And that's not just going to improve their professional career, but a side effect is it's going to impact all aspects of their life. Okay. So you can see I'm very passionate about this idea of authentic leadership, and that's because I've had a really interesting journey to reach this place. I've been talking for some time about creating this space for my team, and sometimes I get it right, and sometimes I really misstep entirely. I'm human. I don't get it right all the time. But when I do break down what's worked, I end up with something akin to it feels good. And that's not, right? That's not super helpful. Well, it just felt good. It felt right. And I get that is part of the criticism actually that goes against authentic leadership, is that it can be quite esoteric. But I've been managing sales development teams for about a decade, and I was a horrible manager to start with. I didn't understand why people wouldn't just do what I asked or told them to do. I didn't know why my title as boss, as manager, as team lead wasn't enough. Why won't they just do what don't they know that I've got their best interests at heart? Don't they know that I want them to succeed? Why won't they just do what I ask? So I had this going on. And at the same time, I was having meetings with my manager, and they were pretty unproductive and unsatisfactory as well. And I wanted to understand why. I started to do mindfulness exercises out of work. I did a feedback session, which is really, really hard. Any leaders out there who haven't done feedback sessions, do it. It's hard, like to really understand how people view you and look at you and see you. Hearing it can be really hard, but it's to internalize that is one of the most powerful things you will do as a leader. And fun fact, my team thought I swore too much. So I'm on my best behavior today. I promise I'm not going to drop an F-bomb. I'm trying hard to listen to my team there. But I also learned, right, that when I thought I was being agreeable, I could come across as aggressive. And I learned to smile when I spoke and to be conscious of the language that I would use. No swearing. And I also started to pay attention to my reactions and what triggered those reactions. Like, why was I getting so defensive all the time? If someone did better than me, I would immediately think, a bit of imposter syndrome, right? Or they're going to think that I'm not the right person for the job. They're going to replace me. And I was operating, from this place where these negative interactions came about because I was operating from a place of fear or shame. I wanted to be seen and I wanted to be heard. And when I thought that I wasn't, I would get frustrated. And that frustration led me to get really defensive, and it caused people to react to my responses in a negative way. And it was just this giant vicious cycle of misery and misunderstanding. And then I start to think about my team and how I'm really not that different. I'm not particularly special. If I'm operating from this place, though, if my reactions are coming from this place of fear and shame, then 100% my team are operating from this place, right? They're younger than me. They view themselves as more disposable than me. We all know about the revolving door of sales development reps. They in and up or in and out. They're a few years out of college. They don't have the same experience that I do. I began to believe they were definitely operating from this same place. And then when I understood that, it stopped me from getting frustrated with my team. And it allowed me to communicate with them really on a different level. If I know that they're a little fearful or a little tense or a little embarrassed, if I can take that away from them, then they can focus on the matter at hand, on the task at hand. And you know what? It worked. I was more relaxed. I was more open to mistakes. Who cares? Who cares if they make a mistake? I'm asking them to experiment. If they experiment and make a mistake, I got to live with that. And really being able to create this space for real communication is, for me, what real authentic leadership looks like. We're human. We're flawed. We mess up every now and then. It's okay. It's okay to allow my team to know that's okay. And really, that gave me some of the best teams I've ever had the pleasure of working with. By being my true self, I allowed those around me to be their true selves too. They're my partners. We trust each other. They make me look good, and we're going to walk together on the path to success. And this was really my journey to understanding what it means to be an authentic leader, and really why I'm so passionate about it. And then, I want to wrap this up by talking about what this has to do with COVID and the recent tensions in the US and around the world, which I would say has been a shared experience. We just touched on this idea of trust. Trust is an amazing outcome of authentic leadership. And I want to give a couple of examples of how this came into play. So at the start of shutdown, it was the beginning of Q2, and there was a lot of talk everywhere about reducing targets. There was podcasts, there was webinars, there was articles written. Everyone was talking about whether or not targets should be reduced. And, I was actually against it. I don't think it's a good idea to just drop targets based on nothing. We had no data. No one here's lived through as far as I know, no one's lived through a global pandemic. Instead, I was really honest, or I have been really, really honest with my team. And I've told them that I don't know how we're going to be impacted. But I do know that the role of sales development is to create engagement. It's not to close deals. It's to start conversations. It's to create pipeline. So there's a chance we're not going to be impacted the same way. And I also told them that I'm keeping an eye on the output and the results, and that I will do my very best to make sure that they're taken care of this quarter. We discussed the importance of not slowing down. So when we do have data to collect at the end of the quarter, I can go and show the exec team that our output that was totally consistent. The impact was COVID. And my team know and trust that I'm creating a case to take care of them. They also know I can't make promises. It's a very transparent conversation. And I have to tell you, My team have not stopped. They went from March into April they did not take a breath. And the level of creativity that I've seen and the level of dedication, in spite of absolutely everything going on, has been so impressive. I can't be more proud of them. And I put this down to the trust that's been built due to authentic leadership. And then, we have this first week of June. Awful. We all witnessed the murder of George Floyd. And how do we respond to our people then? How do we strike the balance between work and being authentic? And I'll be honest, I don't think there's a balance here. I told my people that they need to do what they need to do to heal and grieve. If they need to take time off to protest, if they need to take time off to give back to their community, I need them to feel comfortable that they know that they can do that. And I needed them to know there would be no repercussions, for them to tell me that, yeah, I was not productive this week. I was very distracted by what was going on in the world. And because they came to me and we were open and honest, we built priority plans and we talked through it, and everyone had the flexibility to do what they needed. So it's obvious. It's an obvious statement for me to sit here and say, yes, the way to lead through a crisis is to be authentic. But, we've just established that teaching authenticity is hard. How do we create a space where people can be seen and heard? And I would hazard a guess and say that the last few months, every single person here has been able to exhibit some level of authentic leadership. We sat through webinars telling us to dedicate time to really speaking to and hearing what our reps or prospects had to say. We carved out time from those Zoom calls, from our meetings, where we intentionally discussed what's going on, and we were present. We were really, really present. We weren't thinking about the agenda. We weren't thinking about work, what to say next. For those openings of every call, we were there. We were in the moment. We genuinely cared, and we should be doing this anyway. We were forced into these new behaviors by this shared experience, but we should be striving to do this always. So, in short, we don't need to wait for a crisis to behave like this. The last few months, the fact that it has been a shared experience, no matter where we are in the world, we've all been impacted, right? So I believe this has allowed us to be more authentic in our leadership, and therefore something we can now lean on to help guide us through other situations, work or otherwise. And I think the last few months gave us some real life references and examples we can grasp onto to exhibit how we can do this in the real world. If we're present, if we're honest, if we're vulnerable, if we can tap into this and continue to create space away from fear or shame, and remember that we've done it and how we did it, then this is our first step to becoming an authentic leader. So that's everything from me this afternoon. Thank you so much for listening.
We have there was one question that was in chat. I don't know if we have much time left, but the question was, how do you draw the line between sharing too much insights into private life and not? Is that something that you could answer within?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So I think, firstly, you don't have to share too much about what's going on in your life. I think the transparency can come from letting your team know what's going on with all the meetings. They see you have meetings with other executives and other leaders in the organization. And I think one element of being authentic is not being afraid to let them know. Trust that they're going to understand what you mean and what you're saying. Like I said, I told my team I can't promise them that I'm going to reduce their targets, but I'm going to do my hardest, and I'm building a case. And in order to build a case, this is what we need to do. This is the effort we need to put in. So you can be truly authentic and transparent and present without sharing too much of your life. And, you know, if you do, I think just always remember to be professional. You know, yes, share what's going on. I'm sitting here. My team saw me wear the same outfit 4 days in a row, and they can see my husband walking back and forth. All of you are looking into my house right now, right? Into my apartment. But, you know, it's still professional. You don't have to go too much into sharing private life to be authentic and transparent.
Well, thank you so much, Natasha. I think you offered to continue the discussion further through LinkedIn and on offline, but I appreciate your wisdom, and thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And yes, you can find me on LinkedIn if anyone wants to continue the conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.